welcome back to the deep dive. You know all that buzz about AI, like
Yeah.
it's going to take over the world, right?
Right.
Well, today we're going to kind of flip the script a little bit
Yeah.
and look at the real story behind this AI boom, and it might surprise you.
It's a story about people.
Yeah.
And we're using a 60 Minutes report to help guide us.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
So we're talking about Kenya,
Yeah.
a nation that's often called Silicon Savannah
Mm-hmm.
because it's become like this unexpected tech hub
Yeah.
that's attracting like all these big names like Microsoft, Google, Meta.
Exactly. And what's really interesting is that Kenya is actively pursuing these companies, offering them financial incentives.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And, well, let's face it, kind of leveraging their more relaxed labor laws to make it a sweeter deal.
I mean, yeah, with youth unemployment like hovering around 67%,
Right.
it's kind of obvious why they would be, rolling out the red carpet for these companies.
Yeah.
But this report reveals a side to all this boom that's a little unsettling, to say the least.
Yeah, the report highlights how AI isn't quite as automated as we tend to think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it really relies on what they call humans in the loop.
Okay. Humans in the loop. What exactly does that mean?
Well, essentially, it's people doing the behind-the-scenes work that makes AI function.
Okay.
So tasks like data labeling, content moderation, things like that.
Okay, so give me an example. Like what kind of tasks we're talking about?
So imagine you're trying to teach a self-driving car what a stop sign looks like.
Okay.
So someone, a human, has to label thousands of images,
Wow.
painstakingly outlining, the shape, the color, even the location of the stop sign in the picture.
Oh, wow.
And so the AI can then learn to recognize it on its own.
I never really thought about it like that.
Yeah.
That's a lot more manual labor than I imagined.
It is, and it's not just stop signs either. Think about medical diagnoses. AI can be trained to spot diseases in scans, but someone needs to go through and label all those scans first, right? Identify healthy tissue versus, potentially cancerous cells.
Right.
So, yeah, it's a very human-driven process.
And then there's also content moderation,
Right.
which I can only imagine is pretty intense.
Yeah, that's where you have humans who are tasked with filtering out the harmful content online.
Right.
So we're talking like graphic violence, hate speech, or even, child sexual abuse material.
Yeah, it's pretty sobering to think that there are people doing that work
Yeah.
day in and day out just to keep the internet like a little less awful.
And what's really concerning is that a lot of this work, which, as we've said, can be incredibly tedious and really emotionally taxing,
Right.
it's often outsourced to countries like Kenya, where the labor is so much cheaper.
Yeah, this report actually featured interviews with some of the Kenyan workers.
Yeah.
And honestly, I was just floored when they revealed how little they were being paid.
Yeah, some were making as little as $2 an hour.
$2 an hour.
For this kind of work, it's mind-boggling when you think about the profits these tech giants are bringing in.
It's hard to believe that that's even legal.
Well, yeah, and that's part of the issue. The report states that companies like Sama, which hired workers from Meta and OpenAI, were paying their employees a fraction of what they were receiving from those tech giants.
So basically, these companies are like taking advantage of the lack of strong labor laws and just, the desperation of people needing jobs.
And it creates this really kind of disturbing system where workers are afraid to speak up about the low pay or the poor working conditions because they're terrified of losing their jobs.
It sounds like almost like a modern-day sweatshop, just with computers instead of sewing machines.
That's the comparison that 60 Minutes makes, and it's hard to disagree when you listen to the stories of these workers. It's really quite something.
Yeah, it's really heartbreaking to hear some of these stories.
Yeah.
And, I can only imagine what kind of toll this work takes on their mental health.
Oh, absolutely. That's another big thing the report digs into.
Okay.
The workers were describing this like really intense pressure to meet these crazy deadlines.
Yeah.
Which led to a lot of stress and anxiety, understandably.
Yeah, always worried about, making mistakes or falling behind, knowing that, their jobs are always on the line.
Exactly. And remember, we're talking about people who are exposed to some of the darkest corners of the internet every single day.
Right.
They're the ones filtering out the worst of the worst, the violence, the hate speech, all these disturbing images.
It's no wonder they're experiencing psychological trauma.
Yeah, and they are. Workers were reporting PTSD, depression, anxiety as a direct result of being exposed to this content all the time.
Wow.
Some even said they had trouble socializing, forming relationships
Right.
after spending so much time immersed in this kind of content.
It's like it's seeping into their real lives.
It is. It really is.
Oh, man.
There was even one worker who shared that they were experiencing sexual dysfunction after working on a content moderation project for Meta,
Oh, gosh.
where they had to review a constant stream of pornography.
That's just devastating.
It really is. And it underscores this huge need for these companies to provide real mental health support for their workers.
Yeah.
But the report actually found that the services that were offered were often, pretty insufficient, leaving the workers feeling unheard,
Right.
like their concerns just didn't matter.
So it's not just the low wages and the demanding conditions, it's the lasting psychological impact that's being ignored.
And then on top of all of this, the lack of, strong labor laws in Kenya leaves these workers with very little recourse to address any of these issues. They're basically trapped in this system where speaking up could, cost them their jobs.
It's like they're stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
They need the work,
Yeah.
but at what cost?
Exactly. And it's not even just limited to one company.
Oh, really?
The report also talks about Scale AI, another big name in this AI training world.
Okay.
And they face similar accusations of exploitation through their platform called Remo Tasks.
Remote tasks. What happened with that?
Well, people working for Remo Tasks reported that they weren't getting paid for some of the tasks they completed.
What?
Yeah, and that their accounts were being shut down suddenly.
For what reason?
For alleged policy violations, but they had no way to actually contest the decisions.
So it's like they're being punished arbitrarily.
Exactly. And then after, facing all this public criticism, Remo Tasks just, abruptly shut down operations in Kenya, leaving so many workers in a really precarious position with no income and no explanation.
It's like a pattern. Companies exploiting workers in developing countries, prioritizing profit over people, and then disappearing when the spotlight gets too bright.
Yeah, it's a really disheartening pattern, and it raises all these questions about, the ethical responsibility of these big tech companies towards the people who are powering all their fancy AI advancements.
It's easy to get caught up in, the excitement of all the new technology and all the possibilities, but we can't turn a blind eye to the human cost.
Absolutely. This 60 Minutes report is a real wake-up call, I think, urging us to look beyond the hype and really acknowledge the real people whose labor is making all of this possible.
Yeah, it's time to move beyond just celebrating, technological progress and start demanding more transparency and accountability from these companies.
We really need to make sure that, the benefits of AI are shared more widely. And that the workers who are contributing to this whole industry are treated with fairness and dignity and respect.
It's about recognizing that progress shouldn't come at the expense of human well-being.
Exactly. And this isn't just a problem for Kenya. It's a global issue that needs our attention,
Yeah.
As consumers and citizens, we all have a responsibility to ask tough questions and demand better from the companies that we support.
Yeah, we got to make sure that the future of AI is one where both, technological advancement and human rights are valued and protected. It's almost like, we're living in one of those science fiction novels where the future is finally here.
Yeah.
But it's not quite the utopia we were all promised,
Yeah, this report definitely pulls back the curtain on that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And it's such a stark reminder that the progress we all celebrate often comes at a hidden cost.
And you know what's really striking about this whole thing?
What's that?
It's how it kind of flips the script on that whole AI takeover narrative.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
We're also focused on the idea that robots are going to replace our jobs and all this.
Right.
But this report shows how much AI actually still relies on humans.
Yeah.
Human labor,
It's kind of ironic, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're worried about robots taking over, but it's actually humans who are being exploited to make those robots smarter.
It's a really complicated issue, and there's no easy fix, but this report definitely brings up some crucial questions
Yeah.
that we all need to be asking, like,
Yeah, like what are the costs?
yeah, what's the true cost of all this progress?
Right.
And who's really shouldering the burden?
Yeah, and how do we ensure that the future of all this,
Mm-hmm.
the future of AI is like a future that benefits all of humanity,
Yeah.
not just, a select few.
Exactly.
It's not enough to just like be wowed by, all the cool gadgets, and
Right.
the potential of the
And
technology.
you need to be informed,
Yeah.
Be informed consumers, be aware of where all this is coming from, the human labor behind it, and demand better from the companies who are, ultimately profiting from all this.
So next time you're interacting with AI, think about it.
Yeah.
Think about the people behind it,
Mm.
whether you're asking a chatbot a question,
Right.
or using like facial recognition or whatever.
Think about the data labelers,
Yeah.
the content moderators.
All the people who are kind of like,
The unseen backbone of all this.
yeah, the unseen backbone, and ask yourself, is this progress worth the price?
Yeah.
Is it worth the price that someone else is paying? That's something we all need to think about.
It really is, yeah. It's a conversation that we all need to be having.
Definitely. Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive, but thank you for listening, and be sure to tune in next time for more in-depth explorations into the world of tech and its impact on our lives.